Hi there, welcome to Coach Focused, where we focus on coaches who are using online video in their practice successfully. And today we have Debra Burton Brown with us, and she is a learning and development consultant, learning and development enthusiast. And what she does is she does a lot of blended learning, where she goes in and does some in-person training for a corporation or a government agency, and then works also with some online training and does a lot of one-on-one coaching with the attendees. And she does that remotely, not via Skype, but via something similar. So I'm gonna let Debra introduce herself, tell us just a little bit about where she's from and whatnot, and then we're gonna really dig into how she's using online video.
Well, Brighton, it was so cool that we connected via LinkedIn, which is terrific. It's like a starting of a tool that we can use to connect to each other. And what most people don't realize is that LinkedIn is just one part of the online experience. What you're doing, the video, is like the second component that makes it more a connection, a real person connection. So it was almost by default. I had a client who said, we can't do the standard 6-hour seminar. And this was about 10 years ago. And I said, well, if I did some of it online, would that help? And they said, well, how are you going to do that? And back then it was with a blog. So, that was kind of my only cheap and easy tool. It was government, so I had to make it secure. So they had to have a password. It couldn't be public. I had to pay for the service. And once I did it, it was so strange because over the years teaching for that agency, it started to build a community. And of course, by this, you're kind of gathering, I live in Virginia. I live not that far from Washington, D.C., Charlottesville, the James Madison University area. So it was, it was kind of like the clients ask you for something and you go, okay, I'll make it happen. I don't know how I'll make it happen. I'll make it happen. And that started my love affair with the whole online, experience. So I don't know what else to tell you, except that's how it all started.
That's perfect. It's great. And so maybe you could tell us, in terms of what you're using to do your coaching, because there's many things that we could talk about in terms of how you're using online video, especially for the courses and whatnot. But let's focus on that when you're doing one-on-one coaching. What does that look like? How does that work, technically, or, how do you even schedule things? Or how does that whole process work for your client?
Well, in the beginning, and there's always that beginning where, it's that trial and error part where you're trying to figure it out. I would literally send an email to, I might have 30 people that I'm coaching in a class that have taken a course. They've seen me face to face, and now we're doing the coaching element after the class. I'd send them an email and I'd say, here's my available times. You pick one. Then I'm playing email tag back and forth. Very tedious, very time consuming. I do not, if anybody wants to do that, I don't recommend it. I just don't. I use vCita. A lot of people use, Time Trade? I think that's the name of another one. And what they do is they go to my website, they call it, there's a little pop-up, and then they look at that pop-up and it has my schedule. So they just pick 2 or 3 times that work for their schedule. And it's great because I even get a text message and says, so-and-so has scheduled this appointment. Here's the choices. Which one do you want? Takes me to the app. I click confirm and we're done. It's great. And then it sends them out reminders automatically. And I'll tell you, for only about $200 and some odd a year, it's the best service I've ever encountered. So I use all online now.
Great. What is the name of that service again?
It's vCita. Little v, not a big V, and the C is the big C. V and then CITA, C-I-T-A. Love it. I tried Time Trade. I like that one. I use a Google Calendar, though, for most of my appointments, and the vCita just really integrates well with the Google.
Great. Well, I'll have a link to that in the description down below, because I'm really big on that. I use 2. I use Schedule Once, which I like, but I like Calendly more. But there are certain things that Schedule Once does, like it sends that text message. Great to be like, oh, someone just scheduled something, and also, oh, you've got something coming up. Don't forget.
Right. I love that reminder.
Yeah.
The other thing I like, because I was not good at the follow-up. And what I also like about a service, whether you use vCita or another one, is they send me a little reminder, says, now your appointment's done. And I think you got one last week. You got a little thank you from me.
Yep.
And I like that because it's fresh in my head. I just quickly log on. It keeps a track of my conversation. And so if there were 3 points I want my coaching client to remember from last week, it's right there in that little message. Remember, next week we're going to talk about A, B, and C. And then it has the link for them to go ahead and set up their next appointment. I mean, it just really makes it effortless on their part. I like whatever makes it easy on the client. That's what I'm looking for. What do they want? What's going to make it easy for them?
That's great, because it goes beyond just a scheduling tool then, and it is kind of a client management tool too.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And the service I have with them, just to add one more thing, the service I have with them, the other thing I like is anytime they wonder what we've talked about, they can log on and they can see all our conversations. They can see it, not just me. So they can actually see their, here's what we talked about, here's where we go. And I like that they get progress.
Okay, yeah, so that's like kind of the email conversation. Okay, so someone scheduled a time with you. Then what's the next step? How do they actually get to see you on camera?
Well, either they've said they want Skype, they want FaceTime, or I also use ClickMeeting. And ClickMeeting is similar to what you're doing right here with Zoom, which I was curious about. So I'm so glad we're doing the Zoom experience so I can see that. Go to, what is it, WebEx, the GoToMeeting.
Yeah.
I love that service, and it's pretty pricey if you're a new entrepreneur or a new coach. So what I like about ClickMeeting is for about $200 seems to be my price point. For about $200 to $300 a year, I can schedule unlimited meetings with up to 50 participants. So all I do is send my coachee a link, and then we can do a video chat, just like we're doing right here. If they don't have, or say they're not comfortable with Skype or they're not comfortable with FaceTime.
Yeah.
Usually though, they're very comfortable with one or the other. And I have an iPad and I have a Samsung tablet. So if it's FaceTime, I'm using the iPad. If it's the Skype, I'm using my Samsung tablet, because that again, it's, what's easy for them? What do they want? How do they, if they know FaceTime, I have a couple of clients that only do FaceTime. That's all they really know. So we FaceTime.
Yep. That's great. Well, you mentioned with ClickMeeting, the ability to do whiteboards, which I think was great. So maybe you could talk a little bit about how you do that with your clients.
Well, what I love about the whiteboard experience for them is we both see each other. So in other words, both of our cameras are on. They're in the sidebar. And right there on that sidebar, and then the two of us can see this whiteboard right in the middle, or you can configure it. That's the other cool thing. You can configure it any way you want. I give them permission to use their cursor on their computer or on their tablet. So it'll work with an Apple, like an iPad. It'll work with an Android product. It'll work on their PC. So they have permission to use their cursor. And so if I say, all right, today we're going to talk about setting boundaries. And we're going to talk about the tasks that you have in your day. I want you to write down a few tasks that you normally do during the day. And then I might say, circle the ones that you resent the most. Mm-hmm. So now we've got interaction. We're participating. And we can both write on it. And I can say, well, I can go and put a check by one and say, tell me, what is it about this one that really irritates you the most? Or why is it that one doesn't? And so you've got that hands-on element to it. Is that making sense? Am I saying this?
That is totally great. And I love that idea. And I think, it's something that I'm probably going to adopt for working with people with video, for explaining things like, 3-point lighting. It's something you got to draw. And I think, just being able to pull up a little drawing thing would be perfect.
And you can preload. I mean, that's the other cool thing. I can preload slides on it. So let's just say we're going over something that is pretty standard that I go over with maybe the course is about business writing. So we're talking about the structure of writing. I'm going to go over it with all the coachees in that office. I can go ahead and load that on there. And then when they log on, I can just flip through those slides and we can both talk about it. They can say, well, this part's difficult and this part's easy. And I don't know, anytime it seems to me, and I do this even with large groups for like a group coaching experience, I can have up to 4 people manipulate the cursors. So there can be 4 different cursors going on. That's almost, I don't know how to say it. It starts to give it that sexiness, that zest, that it's not just a static experience. They're in it. It becomes real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so interesting to see how potentially this can work for group coaching. And I love the idea of 4 people drawing on the screen at the same time, because and when you're in a group experience, you got a big piece of paper and you're all drawing and you're kind of like getting your ideas across. That is a great tool. I hadn't thought of that for group coaching. But clearly, the other big benefit is the ability to see the person. And we were talking about this a little bit before, was body language and whatnot. So maybe you can touch a little bit on why you love video from that aspect of working with a client, and why it's so great to see them on camera.
Well, now here's my little caveat on that. I actually like phone too. So okay. I do like video, and I'm an old phone addict. So and part of that stems from I have to justify my love. I did hundreds and hundreds of radio appearances, and when you do radio, you don't have any. There's no visual. You're leaning on that voice, and it's also very fast. I'm a handwriting expert, so people would hand me a piece of writing, and then I'd have someone live on the air. There's 2 million listeners, and they're going, "Okay, Deborah, tell us what you think about this person." And you've got to be able to think fast on your feet.
Right.
That, though, I have found really then kind of bolstered that love affair with the video, because it was that same idea of when my client shows up, I can see by their expression, by their body language, by not just their voice. I don't have to totally lean on that voice. And the biggest kicker today, and this is the real reason, and this is really selfish on my part, is there is such a multitasking kind of like mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm going to do a coaching session with you, and I'll also be checking my emails while I'm in this coaching session.
Right.
Yeah. And on the video, so busted, can't do it, because if you're looking down at your emails,
mm-hmm.
I will figure out what you're. And I don't know why people think they can do this under the table, and nobody's going to know what they're doing. What the heck is that? I see that in training classrooms all the time. If you want to text. If you want to email. Don't think that hiding under the table means I don't get it. Have you found that to be true though too?
Yeah, definitely. And I found, like, especially, webinars are one of the things. I'll put on a webinar and I'll start doing 10 other things. And there are some techniques during webinars for engaging your audience every, minute or two. It's like, okay, well, if you agree with this, type Y. And then you're like, oh yeah, your brain kind of like hears that there was a question. And you're like, okay, I'm supposed to be back over there. So really keeping people engaged today is huge. And it's so easy to just kind of trail off and get involved in something else. Especially, with group coaching probably it's a bigger issue than with one-on-one. But when you're doing one-on-one and you're looking directly into someone's eyes, it's really hard to start doing something else.
Right.
Yeah.
It's that accountability and that focus.
Mm-hmm.
With just the phone, I'm pretty good at it, at keeping them engaged and keeping them on track. Again, I did radio, I did television, I did years of this. I had people coach me. And most new coaches now, you're not going to get that experience first. You're not going to,
right.
If that makes sense. So it's like, what tool can I use so that I instantly know my client is paying attention to me?
Mm-hmm.
And we're dialoguing.
Yep. Yeah. And I think you can obviously also see emotion and body language. And one of the things we mentioned briefly is I tell people that I'm working with who are about to go on camera that they should do the Superman pose. This is, you stand with your feet shoulder width apart, and you put your hands on your hips, and you puff out your chest, and breathe deep. You do that for 30 seconds and it really just, it pumps up your body, your energy inside your body. And Deborah was mentioning one of the things she talks about is to be like, yay! And just like, and what's great is when you're on video, you can tell if your client's actually doing what you want them to do. Like, so you kind of feel, you feel silly when you're standing in a room and you're just like, okay, I'm talking on the phone to someone and I'm doing this to them. Tell if someone is going through the motion and there's this energy that your body develops by moving. And so you can keep a little more honesty going on there. Or if they're taking notes on screen, you can see that they're actually writing down what they're supposed to be writing down and not typing an email.
Exactly. Well, and here's the really cool thing that someone did with me with just radio. And then I liked it so much that's why I started using the ClickMeeting as opposed to always using Skype or FaceTime if I had a client that was comfortable with that venue. Is because I can record the session and then I send them the video. Yeah. And it's great for them because if we have been writing things out and working on the screen or on the whiteboard together, then they've got a copy of it. They can go back and refresh their memory. And I might say, okay, I want you to go back and look at the video about halfway through. And for our next session, I want you to tell me these 3 things. And see, I already know they're on the video. Yeah. So, and the other thing is we often, and myself included, have no idea how we show up.
Right.
I've had more clients tell me that I've said, well, you remember you just talked about body language, right? And what a difference it makes in the pose. If I say, okay, one reason we're having trouble is when you go into the boss, if your body language says, beat me right across the top of your forehead, then automatically we're not going to get the respect we're entitled to because our whole body language says, I don't deserve it. Right. Well, it's one thing for me to say that. But what do they say about a picture's worth 1,000 words? Right. When they watch the video, what do they get to experience? Themselves.
They see exactly how they're showing up. And especially if you're doing that, like, okay, I want you to do this, and this is what you're going to do right before you walk into your boss. They can see it, how they did it. They can see how they showed up. I think that really there's a lot of power in how you hold your body with kind of changing the way you think about yourself. Yeah. They tell you if you're supposed to smile before you get on the phone. But it works. So they wouldn't tell you that if it didn't work. Great. So, I mean, we've talked a little bit about the equipment that you use. So pretty much it's, an iPad or an Android. So very simple.
And there's an app for almost everything. For example, technology-wise, the vCita, the scheduling, I have an app for that. It's good for all the mobile devices. The Skype, the FaceTime, and my ClickMeeting are all app friendly and all like Chrome friendly, Firefox friendly, Safari friendly. So you know that you're not going to have a problem with your browsers because that can be an issue. Yeah. If you're working with the corporation that has a lot of security measures, I work with the military quite frequently. So it's not uncommon for their browsers to have issues. I also can't always do the video if they're at work. Or I have to use they have to go into a room and get, like special permission. Yep. So I found that almost all of them have a smartphone that they own personally. And this is a great way for us to get around all the government restrictions. Yeah. Because it's what makes it easy for the client. Right. Yes. Very good. Well, one other thing we talked about a little earlier while we were getting prepared is the fact that you're standing now. And this just kind of came into my mind is that, if you're coaching one-on-one, probably you're sitting down. But I think there's a lot of, people love to stand. And I guess if you're on the phone, I often will walk around but video, you can put this camera as high or as low as you want. So that's another great thing about being able to do this on video, being able to do it remotely in general. Right. Well, Brighton, though, here's an important distinction for those who think, and this is, I've done the career development courses for many years, and oftentimes my coachees are going to have phone interviews and their panels, okay? And so there's a tendency, I don't dress up, I'm sitting down, I'm looking at notes. Okay, one of the first pieces of coaching I received when I was doing radio was do whatever you have to do and stand up.
Yeah.
That's step number one, stand up. 2 reasons. Number one, your body language, like we already talked about, is more confident. The second thing, though, is when people are standing or sitting on a high stool, and that's the second thing, you can make decisions faster and better. So if I'm the coach and my job is to really listen actively to my coachee, then I want to put myself in a position where I can do that. And so standing or sitting on a high, you know what I'm talking about, like those bar stools?
Yep.
That is going to be what I'm going to do to make sure that I'm at my peak as a coach. Now, if they don't want to sit on a high stool or they want to sit at their desk, I'm okay with that. I don't say you have to do like I do.
Right.
But again, it's me, the coach, knowing that I've set myself up to be of most use to my client. So that is really a big one for me. I tell people, if you're going to coach using video or using Skype or FaceTime, stand up.
Great advice. I love that. And one of the things I also want to get into is when you stand up, make sure that you raise up your camera too. So you're not looking directly, down on your client. I mean, a couple things happen. Either they look up your nose, double chin, or they feel like they're,
my age.
So
we have to watch that.
Yeah, exactly. So just little tips like that. But, what about some problems that you've had? Speaking of, not looking good on camera or whatnot, what about issues that you've had with technology? You also mentioned the military and security.
Yeah.
So,
well, with the military, oftentimes we end up doing phone just because they can't do the other.
Right.
And if we do a video, like I said, we have to borrow a room, which is an extra hassle for them. We've got to go through security clearance.
Yeah.
Yada, yada. So with military clients, often it still reverts back to the old phone. The nice thing is they know me. And that's why I use the other tools such as vCita to make it, easy for them to schedule and the follow-up and the conversation. The internet connection is the biggest one. I will never forget the first time I tried to use ClickMeeting, and it was such a dismal failure that I did not use it again for 6 months because I was horrified that I couldn't get the connection to work right. It kept going in and out. People kept freezing. So if I had to offer words of wisdom, learning the hard way, and you probably have figured this, I live in a rural area. Having them come out and actually double check my internet and then tell me what is the best way to get the strongest signal, that has been the biggest help of all. Because after all, if you have a weak internet connection, that just kind of blows the whole deal. I don't know. You're the video person.
I completely agree with that. Whenever I do these, this is actually a cord. I'm connected, not even on Wi-Fi. I'm connected directly to my router. This cord goes all the way up my stairs and over to the router. But I've just found, sometimes you just never know what's going to happen with Wi-Fi.
Exactly.
And,
you don't.
If you're, coaching, Wi-Fi might be good enough. One thing I found is if you're a coffee shop worker, Starbucks has really fast internet.
Do they really?
Yeah, because they're partnered with Google. And so they've got some of the fastest internet around, as long as it's quiet enough in there to have a conversation. If you need to get out and about, you can try a Starbucks for fast internet connection. I think that's great.
Here's one of my little deals, and thank you for that tip on the Starbucks. Because I deal a lot with the military and also with companies that have proprietary products, I have never done a coaching session unless it's no video in a public place.
Mm-hmm.
I always find a private location somewhere, or I schedule it when I'm not traveling because, like, for example, I might have a Slack conversation with them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean by Slack?
Yep.
And that might be better and more confidential than, because in my situation, if we're in Starbucks and they're with the military, we've already got a problem.
Yeah.
Houston, we've got a problem. And so, you know, I know coaches that do it. My husband does. He's a therapist and he does it. But I have never felt comfortable having a confidential conversation in a public place.
Right. Yeah, I guess it does. It very much depends on the conversation you're having with someone and how in-depth you're getting yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I want to, this has been a really great connection here. This is wonderful information that I think people are really going to enjoy, really, especially new coaches or coaches who are, you know, not sure about this whole video thing. I think you've got a great story of how you're able to be so successful with it. And I like also that you point out that you have met these people in person, because that's kind of how it starts. It starts with in-person training, and then you're able to continue that conversation.
Not always. Most of my executive coaching, well, actually all of my executive coaching, like the really top tier, usually comes like the person who might recommend me has met me in person. I have had coachees that I've never actually even seen their face. I wouldn't know them if I passed them on the street. Yeah. And we've done 4 months of coaching other than a still shot.
Yeah.
And so again, it's, you know, what does the client want? What is their schedule? You know, are they zipping around the globe with time zones? You know, that's another reason I went online, is then that way they could access coaching materials 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was easy for them. If they were in Germany and I'm in the US, then, so, you know, I really think the key for me is, again, what makes it best for the client? What is going to make it the most comfortable and the most beneficial for the client? That's,
yeah. And I think being flexible then is, you know, which tool is right for them. So
yeah.
Great. Well, maybe you could tell people how they can get in touch with you, how they can find you online or otherwise.
Well, I don't mind. Just my name. I bought my domain, my name. So it's Debra, Debra, Burton, Burton, Brown, just like the color. And it's DebraBurtonBrown.com. I always go .com, you know, and there's a little pop-up. vCita has a little pop-up that says, leave me a message, or you can go ahead and schedule a session. Pick any of the ones that's free. And if it works for my schedule, I'll send you back a quick little thing that says, I accept. And then what we have to do. And you'll see my Skype name is already on the services. So I already just go ahead and put the Skype name. So if they're geared towards that, then you've already got it. You can send me an invite, or I can send you an invite once you tell me what your Skype name is.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, Debra, thank you so much for sharing this information with everyone here. And I think if people are listening to this interview, they know that I've changed how Coach Focused works over time. And so now I'm just kind of doing these interviews when I find someone interesting enough that I want to interview. And so when I found Debra on LinkedIn, I was like, okay, wait, this is perfect. We need to talk about how she is using online video, that one-on-one with coaching, because, you know, a lot of what I talk about is more the marketing side of video.
Sure.
Really the client delivery. You can really grow your practice, I guess, using video too. So, so you can expect me back here at some point in the future, but otherwise you'll be seeing videos about how to make videos, and then we'll be back with coaches every once in a while. So once again, Debra, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it. And can I make a quick plug for you and what you do? Because I really think, and that was why I wanted to hook up with you, I think coaches really underestimate the value of just videos in general, and they don't have to be perfect. The biggest deal is, and I think you're a living proof, you're so authentic on the air, and I like that you're just genuine. When you're genuine, people watch it. They're engaged. And so I love what you do. I love that you're supporting coaches to explore that avenue. And I agree with you. Use the tools we have. Use them. Grow your practice.
Very good. Well, thanks again, and we'll see you all soon.